Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're looking at a massive shift in how we actually interact with artificial intelligence. We're finally moving beyond just chatting with an AI and endlessly copying text. We're talking about generating functional, ready-to-share files right there inside the platform. So let's dive right into Google Gemini's new built-in file creation and see how it's fundamentally transforming our daily workflows. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover the copy-paste problem, look at how Gemini actually generates these files, and explore its spreadsheet superpowers. Then we'll get into document analysis, share some insider pro tips, and wrap up with the real-world impact on everyday users. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the copy-paste problem. Because to really appreciate the solution, we have to acknowledge the major pain point we've all been dealing with. I'm sure you know the exact feeling I'm talking about here. You give an AI a great prompt, and it spits back this absolutely brilliant proposal, a perfect syllabus, or a tightly structured budget. But then you have to highlight the text, copy it, open Word or Excel, paste it in, and spend literally 15 minutes fixing all the broken formatting. It is so tedious, and it just completely breaks your creative momentum. That old workflow was just packed with friction. Prompt, copy, paste, reformat. But the new way? You just prompt Gemini, and then you simply download the completed file. You jump straight from brainstorming to a finished, formatted document without ever leaving the interface. Which brings us to Section 2, Gemini generates files now. Let's look at exactly how this works today. The sheer scope of supported formats here is seriously impressive. Obviously, you can ask Gemini to export directly into Google Workspace formats like Docs, Sheets, and Slides, but it absolutely doesn't stop there. It fully supports Microsoft Word and Excel files alongside PDFs, CSVs, plain text RTF, and even LaTeX and Markdown for the developers tuning in. Depending on the format, you can download these right to your local machine or push them straight into your Google Drive. But the really fascinating part is how it's actually doing this. This isn't just basic text conversion. If you click the Show Code dropdown while Gemini is working, you can see it actively writing and running Python scripts in the background. It's literally coding your file into existence, defining variables, mapping out headers, and perfectly constructing the document for handing it over to you. Let's move to Section 3, Gemini's spreadsheet superpowers. Because when you integrate this AI directly into Google Workspace experiments, specifically inside Google Sheets, it becomes a phenomenal co-pilot. You can pop open a side panel in Sheets and just type out what you need. Want a table for a vacation plan? Done. Need a complex formula to divide goals by games? Just ask. You can instruct it to apply conditional formatting, build pivot tables to break down regional sales, or even pull in summaries from your other Drive files and emails right there in the spreadsheet. But the absolute craziest feature is the optimization solver. You can give it a heavy logistics task, like figure out the minimum number of employees to hire across 7 shift patterns to minimize payroll, and it just crunches the numbers for you. Now, as powerful as all this is, there's a critical warning straight from the documentation. When you ask Gemini to generate a chart, it drops that chart into a brand new tab along with its underlying data. But, and this is key, that generated chart does not dynamically link back to your original source data. So if you tweak your numbers later on, the AI-generated chart isn't going to automatically update. Definitely keep that limitation in mind. Okay, let's shift gears in Section 4, reading and analyzing documents. We've talked a lot about creating files, but what about analyzing the massive files you already have? 1,000. That is the exact number of pages Gemini can process in a single request. Through its API, it handles PDFs up to 50 megabytes or 1,000 pages long. For researchers, students, or professionals dealing with massive reports, that's just an absolute game changer. But it's not just about raw length, it's about how it reads. Gemini uses native vision to understand PDFs. It doesn't just strip out the text like older tools, it actually sees the document. It understands spatial layouts, interprets charts, and natively analyzes diagrams. Contrast that with uploading a standard text or HTML file. In those cases, Gemini is only processing text, meaning all that rich visual context, like exactly how things are laid out, gets completely lost. All right, moving to Section 5, pro tips and troubleshooting. Because let's be real, cutting-edge AI isn't always flawless. Let's look at some secret workarounds pulled directly from power users in the community. Let's start with getting clean Microsoft Word documents. Sometimes the direct Download as Word button just completely vanishes from the web interface. If you're stuck,
Use the native export button to send the response to Google Docs first. Then, open that new Google Doc, click File, Download, and select Microsoft Word. Yes, it's an extra step, but it flawlessly preserves your headers, tables, and lists. For the developers out there, you know how annoying it is to copy Markdown code from the canvas, only to watch the formatting completely break. Here's a genius prompt hack from the community. Just tell Gemini to place the raw Markdown source code inside a single HTML text area element. When it does, you just hit Preview, and you get a clean, unrendered text box where you can copy the raw code without any issues. And what happens if you're using Gemini Deep Research and the Export to Docs button just straight up fails or times out? It happens. The community advice here is super practical. Protect your work. Manually highlight and copy the main text of your report first. Then, and this is crucial, click the Sources button and copy that reference list completely separately. Automated exports have a habit of dropping citations anyway, so doing it manually guarantees you never lose those vital links.
Finally, let's bring it all home with Section 6, Impact on Everyday Users. We've covered a lot of technical ground, Python scripts, APIs, Markdown hacks, but what does all of this actually mean for the common person?
The real story here is the sheer democratization of creation. You really don't need to be a spreadsheet guru or formatting wizard to get things done anymore. This tech totally removes the friction between having an idea and having a finished, usable product. Whether you're a small business owner mapping out a budget, a teacher structuring a syllabus, or just someone trying to organize a family vacation, you can simply speak your ideas into existence. You get a perfectly formatted file right back, without ever having to wrestle with complicated software menus. It completely flips the creative equation. You're no longer bogged down by the annoying mechanics of document creation. You're finally free to just focus entirely on your ideas. So I want to leave you with this. With all this time you're going to save on formatting, copying, and pasting, what will you create next? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go test these tools out for yourself.